2007 from a cousin of mine who's my age. She lives in Israel. She says, my dad died in '01. She says, you're never going to believe this. Your dad's on the internet. My dad didn't even own a computer. And this photo that I showed you in the very beginning, where he was a model in his hometown, I don't have this picture. So there's a caption about the Friedmans having found my father and rescuing him. And there's nothing else on the internet around Mudhausen about anybody surviving a death march. How did they get the picture? How did they know his story? So here's what happens. Most of which I know, some of which I'm conjecturing. Making up is too strong a word. So I said he spent 18 months in a hospital. During the time he was in the hospital, about halfway through, he contracts this thing, peritonitis. Peritonitis kills most people. It's a stomach ailment that you get bacteria. He starts to recover in early 1946, and he writes a letter home. I'm alive. 8 brothers and sisters. He had no idea that any of the other 7 were alive. He writes home. He gets a letter back. Hey, 3 of us are still alive, 2 brothers and a sister. And they send him a photograph. And they start corresponding. Now, my father, at some point here, gets a photograph, this picture, in his back pocket. He doesn't have this picture in concentration camp, not a chance. But after he spent the time in the hospital, he's on a train. The train back to his hometown has to stop in the same town he was hidden in. And the reason is the Russians and the Americans stopped. The Russians were going west, the Americans were going east. They stopped in the town of Enns, and now the town of Enns became an important border point. He spent 4 hours on the train platform, and so he says to the train conductor, the people who saved my life are just a mile and a half away. No one had phones. Train conductor goes, gets them. Mr. Friedman comes and meets my dad, and my father gives him the photo. So how does my father get the photo? Well, so he's corresponding with his brothers and sisters, and I think at some point, this isn't like today where you have a phone that has 1,000 photographs on it. Back then, people would give a photo to somebody, maybe sign the back or write a little note, great to meet you, here's my number in Dej, or here's my number in Poughkeepsie, whenever you get here. My father asked for a bunch of copies of these pictures. So he has one in his back pocket, he meets Mr. Friedman, he gives him the picture. In the 1960s, an Austrian historian decides they want to find proof that there was Austrian resistance to the Germans in World War II. Well, a form of resistance is hiding prisoners. This guy walked the entire Death March route, knocking on doors, looking for stories about people who had helped any of the marchers. He found 2 stories. 1, the person died almost immediately. 2, he found the Friedmans. The Friedmans told him the story, and they gave him the photo. He wrote it in a book. The book never got published. He died in the 1990s. His heirs gave it to Mudhausen. Then Al Gore invented the internet, and they put the story on the internet, and then my cousin finds it, and I end up in front of you. That's my father's story. I'd love to take your questions.